Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Cerberus. I am Payman Ascari. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Malosh. Andre, how's it going today?
I'm doing fine. I just want to say hi to our co-host Tim Knight, who is a little bit sick. So I wish him to recover fast because we need 3 dogs on the show, not only 2. And we'll try to compensate, but I know we cannot compensate an Irishman. It is not possible. We'll try to do our best today.
Well, I understand you're just a Frenchman, but you're gonna have to pull up the rear on this one. You got to make up for the loss of Tim.
This is not possible. I just unless I borrow something, a hat, maybe a green hat. I'll try. So salute to
Well,
Tim.
we'll try to power through it. Tim, best of luck recovering. Um, I guess the show must go on. Andre, today we're going to be talking about roughly everything surrounding the BC Superior Court ruling with the Richmond lands and transfer of title to the Cowichan tribes. This is going to be a more casual episode, but first of all, hello to the audience. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll get to them at the end. And if you could repost the room, we'd appreciate it. I want to start by saying that I think what's happening in Canada, like we're seeing the end stages of a terminal patient. I think people have finally woken up. They've put up with absolutely everything. You, me, we ran for the People's Party. We tried our best to let people know that something is desperately wrong, and they didn't believe us when we talked to, transing the children, castrating them. They didn't seemingly care. Climate change is a grift that deindustrialized the country. They didn't care. And then all of a sudden, property rights are somewhat marginally possibly violated. And people start getting upset that the municipal halls were full. And I think that's something that needs to be explored. Let's tackle that first before we get to the other issues that the country is facing. And there's a lot of them. Andre, what do you think?
Like you, I was surprised. I just want to make a small comment about this World Economic Forum slogan. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Let's not forget that since 2020 and even I think even further in the past, are we really owner of our land in Canada? And people have this tendency of taking everything for granted. When they're touched by something, they react. During the COVID era, they started to react. They don't react because they are under a psyop of mainstream media. But when you have a court order like this judgment, it touches them directly. And it means that either you are in the civil code of Quebec or you are with the common law in the rest of Canada. You still have a contract if you buy a house. You buy a house, you buy a land, you have some duty, you have some responsibility, but you have some rights in Canada. We don't have the same rights as United States citizens have on their land. But still, and my question would be, the Crown or the government will allow us to occupy a territory, and I think they are, discriminating people since 1968 with this multiculturalism. Some people have rights, minorities. I think it is Charles, what's his name? Fickley? I forgot. Charles Fichtner, who was talking about the I would say the right of minority. The judgment that arrived in BC surprise people, because now you can deprive anybody from their property. This is pure socialism, because it's the government that will allow people to have property of land. And it doesn't mean, let's say together today, when we can refer to Gaza too, what is happening in Gaza. But let's say today they take out this land from people who legally owns them. What do who says that the government will not do the same thing with native people in 5 years? Maybe they will say, we will take the land from you and we will give it to immigrants who arrive here. So it's the judgment of a court that decides your right. This is the state we're in Canada. It should not be a court of justice that would define what is your right. And we talk about right and privileges. Here we live under an era of privileges. And depending on how you comply with the government, you will have more or less privileges. So what I see now, a woman, she posted a comment, oh, okay, if we're not owner of our land, why do we pay municipal tax? And I answer a simple comment, say, why do we pay tax at all? Because taxes, if I'm a sovereign on my land, I don't pay taxes on my land. I have duty to protect the environment, to make sure that I respect the land, that I develop it, but I don't pay taxes. Why do I pay tax? I pay tax for building road between private land. I would pay tax because I would ask the government to build a road between point A and point B, between two properties. But on my property, I'm sovereign. And my question is, and maybe you can elaborate on that, are we really sovereign in Canada?
Sure. That's actually where I wanted to go. Jamie, thank you very much for reposting the stream. Anybody else, if you reposted, we appreciate it. Miss 879, the evening to you as well. I'm driving through the U.S. I was driving through the U.S. Last week, and I'm seeing a lot of industry. And I'm not going to go into details, but I see a whole bunch of lumber, like lumber stacked up. I see a factory with smoke coming out of it. I see a mine. When a month ago, I drove to Calgary from British Columbia, I didn't see that as much. I saw residential units, but I didn't see industry. Why is that? There's probably a lot of reasons, but my main reason is that we don't have property rights. If you own a property, you can destroy it. You can cut down all the trees. You can irradiate it. You can drop raw sewage on it, but then you can't live on it. You can't live off of it. You can't profit from it. So you're a steward of the land because you love your land and you want to get as much out of it so that you can live free. In America, they have that, or at least they have that more. They still have the remnants of their revolutionary spirit. So you have private land and they find a way to capitalize it. You get smaller cities. You get people being productive. And it's a more harmonious form of life. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. The other thing is I want to talk about the U.S. Constitution. Charles Fichtner, he talked about how basically Max, like I think the way that they structured their constitution is they understood that laws are important, like the Bill of Rights, the whole argument that Jefferson didn't want to have that. It's natural law. But then they put that thing in there about the Second Amendment. They understood that the only way that you can protect your property is through force. So if the government comes in, you get to kill them. And that kind of endured. Whereas in Canada, you say we don't have rights, we have privileges. Well, we don't have property rights. It's not our property, it's their property. And we have no way to fight back. Sorry, I lost my train of thought with the dogs there. You go ahead.
Okay. It's interesting what you're mentioning about property rights and the difference between Canada and United States. I will make a parallel with Ukraine. What is happening now was happening now in the Donbass, not what is, but was happening, because Russia is taking back the territory that is, it's his territory. Historically speaking, those people are Russian speaker. And It's like the special military operation. The goal of the special military operation was, we don't want to grab the land. This is not our goal. We want to protect people on this land, and they defend it with military forces. I will make a quite I will give a very simple warning to those government in Canada who are depriving some citizen from their right to have private property. That's the main concern. It is, if you deprive a citizen from his land and you give it to somebody else, that person will have to defend it. You have to defend your land. If you do not defend your land, somebody will attack you. And I mean this. It is not a threat, it's a warning. If somebody would arrive tomorrow and tell me, like the Supreme Court of Quebec says, it's not your land, we will give it back to Native people, I will say, maybe you will kick me out. It doesn't mean that I will not come back. And maybe when I will come back, I will not be as peaceful as I am now, because you are attacking. I will stop here with the comparison, because I will just talk about the pseudo vaccine. When somebody told me that you will force something in me in 2021, I said, if you do this, I will retaliate. There's no way you can threat me like this. So what is happening in BC? It's a direct threat to what was supposed to be the Constitution of Canada. But we know how they treated the Constitution or the Bill of Rights since 2020. So for me, it's not a surprise. What is a surprise? It's like what you said. Some people are reacting. While when this woman, she said, why do we pay municipal tax if we're not owners? So the crisis will slowly drift toward a constitutional crisis, and we will see it in every provinces, and every provinces will react differently depending on their own agenda. Quebec has a different perspective. Maybe we'll talk later about the separatist movement, because the separatist movement is the land. The land. I can talk about, Tim is not here, and Sue Calendaria, she knows about this, but the conflict between Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador for many, many years, when I think it was in 1928, they greeted the Labrador to Newfoundland. Quebec never admitted that. They said this land is Quebec land. So we will open this constitution by force. Somebody will break the constitution. They will just say, we will not comply with this law. And they will challenge the court. And when it will not work, if they feel that they cannot win, because let's say you bought a house and they take it from you, people will retaliate. And I think that's the first step that we are seeing in BC. It's with every aspect of life now. We talk about cattle, how we can grow food. My personal example, in 2022, I wanted to sell my house, and I found a house for sale in Quebec, 4.5 acres. I said, oh, okay, it's not a big land, but I want to install a greenhouse. I called the city there, and I say, can I install a greenhouse? Because there's a small creek on the land. And the engineer said, no, you cannot. It's protected by Duck Unlimited, and you cannot do nothing on your land. I said, why do I buy 5 acres of land if I cannot even install a greenhouse to grow vegetable? It's not a business. I don't ask a permit to grow food, to build a farm. I want to be independent. I could not do it. And this is an example in Quebec. We see it in Ontario. We see it in Nova Scotia. We see it in BC. Where we don't see it, I think it is in Alberta, because Alberta, they have this independence that we don't have. I think unless it is corporate land or crown land, or corporation owns the land for oil and gas. So I think we are entering into an era of constitutional conflict. Who will win? I don't know. But the agenda 2030 is accelerating, but people now are reacting. At the end of a civilization, what happens? Or the end of an empire? It is events are accelerating, and people are waking up faster and faster. Maybe that's what we're seeing in BC now.
So the zoning thing you're talking about, the greenhouse, that's one of the ways that we've been yelling at people. We're saying zoning is a problem. This is a property rights violation, and they say, "Oh, you're a crazy old man. What do you know?" Security of the person is another one. With this vaccine, we're saying, like, you can't do that. You can't force people to take a vaccine. Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. The way we get out of this is by getting vaccinated. That's what Prime Minister Trudeau said. And then this land issue comes up in BC, and it looks like, in one way, you could say that people are finally waking up, and that's a good thing. But I think it's not a good thing. I think it's a bad thing. I think it just shows that the only thing that people care about is the housing bubble. That's it. Because we don't have anything else. We don't have industry. All we have is the housing market. I'm exaggerating. All we have mostly is the housing market. And that's the way that they want it, because they want all the votes to come from the urban centers. They want this elite bureaucracy. Ever since the Liberals in the 60s and 70s, they've just been increasing the value of assets, stocks, housing. And they want that to go forward, where they're financializing the economy. They're buying and selling the houses back and forth. They take the money, they go buy their stake. Screw the blue collar people, screw the rural areas, screw those hicks and rednecks with their backwards conservative mind. And I guess what's happened is this is it's not exactly government policy. This is a First Nations tribe that brought this. However, the government didn't pursue this with enough zeal for this sort of over the last few decades. So in a way, this is because of leftist short-sighted planning to try to. You still there, Andre?
Yes, I'm still there. You see me?
Okay. Yeah, it's a leftist short-sighted policy to try to just keep holding on to power, but now it's blown up in their face. And the reason I say it's not necessarily a good thing is all it really takes is the conservatives, the governments, to come in at the provincial and federal level, and they'll just slap a new coat of paint on it, and they'll say, "Oh, we're gonna build back better," or whatever slogan Pierre Poilievre uses. We're gonna bring it home, and nothing's gonna change. You're right, Andre. We're hurtling towards a constitutional crisis, because property rights. It's not just this slogan that gets thrown around. That's all there is. Like, there is no government without property. If you own property, then you can have a government, and you can say, "Listen, just make sure so that I get along and I can work along with my neighbors." That's the only thing you have to do. But now the government's like, "No, that's my property. I'm going to steal it." Because Payman Ascari and Andre Maloche, they haven't really been putting up a fight for the last 50, 100, 200 years. Let's just go full communist. And if they do that, why should the citizenry observe the law if the government is violating it daily? Why the people will go do it too.
There's one point I disagree on with you, is that you say it's not a good thing. We have to go through hard time. But when we were preparing this episode Thursday, we were talking about democracy, and I wrote my last article is, democracy does not exist. It's a word that it's an empty word. And don't forget one thing: if we talk about communism or socialism, socialism would be the means of production owned by the states. It works on paper, but it doesn't work in reality. There's a discrepancy between reality and what is on paper. And if you refer to what was happening in 1936, 1935, after what they call the new economic policy in Soviet Union, centralizing all the means of production, Stalin at the time, who took power, had to backtrack, because he could not develop the structure fast enough. And during the war, it was even worse because he had to reopen churches because people didn't want to go die for what they call the country or the Soviet Union. And the era of socialism was a very short period because after that they start to reopen the economy to private property. That was in Soviet Union. You had some companies that had private property, so they were admitting that it was not working. What we're seeing now, centralizing the means of production, depriving citizens of the right to have a private property, will mean that people will disengage themselves with what we call solidarity, and they will not comply. There's a difference between doing an insurrection and passive resistance. They will just not comply. And what it is very funny when you don't comply, when they ask you to comply, you just don't comply. You don't protest, but you don't comply. You can stall the economy very fast if you don't comply. You don't even have to go on the street. I would just, the Bud Light effect or the Streisand effect, the Bud Light effect. Bud Light took what, 95% cut on their share within 2 weeks when they hired a transgender quote unquote, because I don't believe that it exists. But when they hired a man to promote the beer, the beer that was the most that is the most sold in United States, it blew up in their face completely. So people will just say, "What? I don't buy anymore. I just don't buy it anymore." Even if you strangle them, they will just not tolerate it, and they will react. Will they? Will they react fast enough? I don't think so. And don't forget one thing: the policies will apply differently depending on the province. In Quebec, it will be different because here we have this tendency of being what we call socialist, the social model. And if I compare with Germany, 60% of Germans do not own a house.
And they brag about it.
And they're happy about this, but you're a tenant. There's one, I was listening to an architect, French architect. His name is David Orbach. And he made a conference in 2011, and he was talking about the house container. House container, what we saw last week with David Garner about all those small houses that are built for people. And he says the house container are made for people. It means that you treat people like merchandise. You can move them from point A to point B depending on the labor force that you need. And you don't have any roots anymore. You're nomad. So you cannot build something. So you cannot build family. You cannot build relationship with your neighbors because you can move. You can be moved by the system. The socialist system was based on that. You were studying at the Moscow University, and you're studying, let's say, 5 years of medicine. After that, the government says you go in Endushi at the other end. You don't have the choice. You go there because we pay your study. So the right to choose will be taken away. People, they don't see it yet, but they will see it soon. And if it starts with the property, maybe they will see it sooner than we thought, from what I see now.
Yes. First of all, Squirrel Nuts, thank you very much for reposting the stream. I'd just like to call on everyone else to repost as well. It would really help us grow our audience. So they've been doing this for a while. I mean, Klaus Schwab, famously said, "You will own nothing and be happy." Before Klaus Schwab was even alive, before he was born, the banks were going around. They're foreclosing. You give a loan, you put them in debt, and they're debt slaves forever. You could have the state that's expropriating. They did that to a lot of people during COVID. If they didn't, they did that to one gentleman in Vancouver. He had a party and they seized his apartment. Now they're doing it through the First Nations, where it's almost transparent. It's indirect, so it seems like the government's like washing their hands. We didn't steal it. It's not in our hands, but it really is. They're all part of the same sort of syndicate. I think they might have miscalculated and overstepped. Again, Now they went after their entire voter base. This isn't, this isn't the left, the liberals that went after independent truckers, like people who wouldn't have voted for them anyway, small business owners. That's not, they hate those guys anyway. They went after the bureaucracy, like the bureaucratic class that's stealing money from you and me through our tax base and buying a second home. And now they're freaking out. I want to tie it into a couple of other things that we were talking about. How we said, you said there's no such thing as Canada. I'm saying Canada's on fire. Well, now this presents serious issues where people might not want to invest in Canada. Little things can happen. Maybe the court rules that if there's a squatter on your property, you have to do this, that, the other thing to get them out. But if the court rules we can take your property away from you whenever we want, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it, people notice these things. So now investment's not going to come into the country. The country is already on fire. Like, it's not like it was in a good position. The GDP per capita is horrible. Crime is horrible. There's far too much immigration, people lining up at food banks. And then on top of this, that I can only describe as a dumpster fire, you get Doug Ford, a conservative, seemingly siding with the Democrats in the U.S. to try to discredit Trump, to put pressure on him to get rid of the tariffs. I guess he probably wants to be the leader of the Conservative Party. And then behind that, you get David Eby, whose own he's the premier of British Columbia. His province is on fire. Property rights are being eroded. He comes to bat and he says, "Oh, I support Doug Ford 100%." They're from two ideologically opposed parties. Mark Carney is quiet, but you know that he's involved in that advertisement as well. So I don't know who's in charge. I don't know what their plan is, but this can't be good for Canada.
Is there a pilot in the plane?
It's on
No, but
autopilot.
you mentioned David Eby and Doug Ford. You say they are from a different ideology perspective. Are they really?
Well,
You know what? You know what is happening now. I will talk about two things. In Quebec, you have Bill C2, which is Bill 2. It was a forced bill to force doctors to be evaluated on their performance, and now it is a big scandal. Now, Doug Ford opened a hotline, 1-800 Dog Ford. Call me, doctors, if you want to come to practice in Ontario. And some doctors, practically 100 doctors called. They called. They want to move to New Brunswick. Now it is a very big crisis. And François Legault, the Prime Minister of Quebec, he went out on a press conference accusing Doug Ford of trying to steal the Quebec doctor. It's like, all the sharks, they're eating each other. One thing, I will go back to the indigenous people. In 1976, when Hydro-Quebec built the James Bay complex, they had to flood the reservoir of LG2, La Grande 2, and it's like a sea. There were a native cemetery in this territory, so they were flooding the cemetery to fill the reservoir for the hydraulic power plant. It was a big crisis between the Quebec government at the time and the Cree. You can imagine, you arrive and you flood a reservoir where your native land is. You have cemeteries, you have hunting habits, and they had to sign a treaty with the Cree and they had to give them something in return. When you negotiate with somebody, if you want to have a win-win agreement, you have to take some things and you have to give something. And in 2002, the Prime Minister at the time signed a treaty with the Cree, which we call the Peace of the Brave, acknowledging the rights of the Aboriginal people on their ancestral land, without any consultation of the population. And it passes, nobody really noticed. But if we arrive now in a crisis where people say, wait a second, I'm here and I stay here and I defend my land. I think about Labrador, for example, and I'm pretty sure I will infuriate Sukil and Dario, because we can open the debate about Labrador. We can open the debate about everything. We can open the debate about who owns the land. Who owns the land is very simple. Might makes right. If I can defend my land, I own it. That's why I was referring to Ukraine. People will go slowly toward a more radical position. You defend your land. What do they do in United States? They have this in the Constitution. They have, if you drill a well, if you drill on your land and you find oil, you have the right to operate it, exploit it. Most probably ExxonMobil or British Petroleum will arrive and offer you $2 million for the well, but you still have the right to have it. We don't have this here. In Canada, we don't have this. Natural resources are not ours. If I find oil on my land, too bad. I lose my land. They will expropriate my land, and that's it. Maybe they will give me money, but it's not my land. So I can guarantee you, maybe that's a wake-up call for Canada. Maybe people will start to wake up and say, wait, where do I go? Where do I go? In a 15-minute city? In a flat, which is what, 25 square meter, when I cannot go out? It's about time that people get kicked, their ass kicked, because it's been many years that we try to put the cover on the pan, and it doesn't work. People, one day they will get up. They will just rise against an authoritarian government, whether it is provincial or federal.
I got a lot of things I want to follow up with you on, but first, Brenda Raven says there has been a similar bill in Alberta to the Bill 2 you're talking about. Brenda, if you can write just a quick synopsis of what the bill in Alberta is about, I'll read it out. And if everybody could share the room, we'd appreciate it. When this issue arose, this BC Superior Court ruling, and I monitor and I observe what's going on, let's say, the right, the freedom movement. And it always fractures. There's always two sides. You have one side that's the hardliner that takes it like a philosopher king approach that says only we know the right way to go. And the right way is, right now, it's C8 and C9. That's where we should focus. The ostrich farm is a distraction. That's the word they use. And they said the same thing about this case. They said it's a distraction. And I said, maybe I can meet you halfway. Maybe you're right. It's not as serious as C8, C9. I think it's serious. Like I think it's as serious as C8 and C9. It's a property rights violation. I don't think this is something that'll blow over. And I think the First Nations, for the first time in my life, I'm seeing the First Nations back down. I'm seeing them scared. They're not coming out swinging like they usually do. Everybody is racist. All white people are colonialists, settlers, conquerors. And they actually backpedaled. I think they understand that they've been used, and they've been used by the state. They've been used for a very long time as the weapon that they use to steal our rights. But now they've gone too far, because now you're not stealing a portion. You're not asking for property taxes for reconciliation. You're asking for everything. You're going to people's house and you're taking everything that's off their plate and say, you can't have this anymore. So I think this is a problem. Just one other thing. It's about Crown land. I just wanted to mention really quickly. It boggles my mind that they have the audacity to tell us that land is $5 million for some shoebox, or the price of land just always goes up. I'm like, 96% of BC is Crown land. Open it the fuck up and let us live on the land.
Well, we can go back. I think maybe the indigenous people, they are starting to realize that the boogeyman strategy does not work. One day you get fed up. What was the Freedom Convoy? They got fed up of a government that is bullying our right. I can go back 1990 with the Oka crisis. It was a golf course that is on quote unquote native land. And the promoter at the time says, okay, I will do a golf course. And the Kanesatake tribe stood up and said, no, you will not do it. And it was a big confrontation between the Quebec government and the indigenous people. One man died, one policeman died. And we have this confrontation between what was Lasagne, who was the That was the Mohawk warrior who was there. He called himself Lasagne in front of this young military officer. It's a very famous picture. And the Mercier Bridge from Chateauguay to Montreal was closed for about 3 months. They had Kalashnikov and they had the AK-47 on the bridge. It was a major crisis. Let's not forget, Native people, they have the right to bear a gun. We don't. But it doesn't mean that it cannot become bloody. If we arrive at a point where people are they're back on the wall and they have no other option, they will fight back. I suspect that they will fight back. Maybe not castrated men, and there's a lot of them in Canada, but you will have people who will stand up and you will say, no, we don't accept your judgment. Oh, you can go to court, to the Superior Court of Quebec or to the Supreme Court. No. We don't go to the justice system anymore. We will just stay here. The Quebec government backtracked. It was 2 months ago because they wanted to pass a law in Quebec to redefine the native right about the lumber. And the native, they started to occupy the street. It was north of Trois-Rivières, north of between Montreal and Quebec. Trois-Rivières is quite a big city between Montreal and Quebec. And the north of Trois-Rivières, which is about 150, 200 kilometers, going to Saint John Lake, they started to block the road again. And the government had to remove the bill. Because the native, they were saying, no, you will not develop, you will not greed lumber companies more land that are our land. So people will maybe imitate Aboriginal tribe. They will just say, wait a second, we will occupy the territory. Occupy the territory. Think about agriculture. How come we don't see farmers occupying their own territory? We saw this in Netherlands. We saw this in Bulgaria. We saw this in France. It did not work very well because every time the government says, okay, we'll negotiate with you. And after that, they impose European Union regulation without any consultation. But the more you pressure the people, the more they will become angry. And it will not end up peacefully. I say it. It's not what I want. That's what the government wants. That's what the power wants. They want this. They want to antagonize. They want to antagonize us so that we can fight and not identify the real enemy. The real enemy now is the power. It's the government, and maybe not people in the parliament. Who manipulates them? Who manipulates them? Corporation are manipulating them. So when you look at what is happening, I don't see any political solution. It will not come from the parliament. Carney, the actual debt of Canada will never be repaid because I wrote this in a recent article. It is a psychological weapon. You do not repay the debt, and you're stuck with the interest of the debt every year that are growing and growing and growing. And in 2019, before COVID, I was talking about the debt in the United States when it was $22 trillion at the time. And I was saying why they pushed COVID, because they wanted to hide the fact that the finance system is so big that it's about to collapse. So they have to compensate with something. Land grab, digital ID, all those dystopian measures, they are pushing faster because they see that people are starting to resist, like what happened with the Freedom Convoy. I hope they will resist. I hope that I will resist. Personally, I will resist. I will not tolerate this because behind that, it's even a more dystopian world. And we're going there. We're going there. But the Western world is so corrupted everywhere. There are a lot of people, they live in a fantasy. When you don't have food, what will be the deficit this year? $100 billion. 2 million people on food banks, and then you dare those government provincial affairs, they dare lecture people on Soviet Union and the dictature and tyranny. This is exactly what we have here. I think it's Kirk Rees who said, well, if Canada does not exist, what do we have? It's up to us to define our own identity. Then where are we if not Canada? And Kirk Rees know better than a lot of us what is Canada. This is up to him and a lot of people to say this is what we want. The government has nothing to say with what we want. Last week when we were talking, 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the pseudo constitution in Quebec, I was referring to Daniel Johnson. It's up to us to define what we are. Nobody can define it for us.
Brenda, she responded, I'm just going to read this out. I believe healthcare hospitals, clinics receive funding based on performing more procedures. This is the bill in Alberta. And I also believe Smith called it performance-based funding.
Yes.
The debt thing is just, it's another issue. I don't know if I have the energy to talk about it. I'm pretty upset with the land thing. I want to share, we can get into it, but it's these damn bankers. Andrew Craner, Alex Craner, he said the difference between France and England, France had their revolution, and when they're upset with the government, the farmers, you said the farmers, they go spray manure on the government buildings. In England, he goes, by contrast, when they're upset, they write a letter to their king, and they think that the king is on their side when the king is totally not on their side. The king's on the other side. A part of that is probably baked into our system here too. And Charles Fichtner, when you interviewed him, he said, we had these United Empire loyalists come up and they're crushing people. And in textbooks, we say that these are the good guys. So that could be another reason of what's going on. Regarding the First Nations and what happened in Oka, I mean, I support that. If you have land and the government comes in and tries to steal your land, I don't support killing a police officer, but you should stand up to the government and be like, hell no, this isn't happening. Now, I don't know if they own that land. I think they've gone a little bit above and beyond where they're just coming out and they're saying, that's mine, everything is mine. And they're starting to get fed up. And the way people get fed up, it doesn't happen overnight. It builds up for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and then it explodes in violence. I'll end in a story. When I was in the Middle East, when you're working in the Middle East, I would see this happening very regularly. Somebody owns a piece of property, they have the title deed, and then a vagrant would come up and he'd be like, oh, my great-great-great-grandfather, he used to live here, the Soviets stole it from him, so that's my property. And then the owner's like, okay, show me your great-grandfather's property title deed. And he's like, no, don't worry about that. Just give me $20,000 and we'll go away. And the guy says, no, get lost. The next day, like 50 of these guys show up on the property. They start protesting. BBC magically materializes. They say human rights violation. And this grift just continues, and it's very difficult to deal with.
Well, you mentioned the BBC, the British Bolshevik Corporation. Yes, it's funny because they're always there when the event arrives. I think they create the events. When you think about you mentioned the French Revolution. Let's be serious. It was not a revolution. It was a putsch in 1789. And some English Canadian, they have a romantic opinion about France or the country of the Universal Bill of Rights, the way that they do protestation in the street, they can make the government bend. Since 1968, it's over. It does not work. French people, they are like sheeps. They scream a lot, but they don't act. Macron was elected on a fraud, and they continue to push the European Union agenda. They are at the same place as the British. Where I could see that it could happen, it's the East European country that are now in the European Union. And we're starting to see it. Slovakia, Hungary, you have Romania. Georgia was with Saakashvili in 2008. Georgia was like the puppet of NATO around Russia. The small poodle who pokes the bear all the time to infuriate him, to make him do bad things, and after that you can accuse them of aggressing somebody. That's the modus operandi of the MI6 and the British intelligence. They're very they're specialists in this. Andrei Martyanov is saying very simple. He says, when you're weak, you act like a terrorist. And this is where I say to Canadian, don't be weak. Stand up. Push the bully. If the government is bullying you, you push them. There's a lot of people who react with the BC judgment. It's the Supreme Court of BC so they react. This is, wait a second, this will not work anymore. Oh, it's the Supreme Court, it's the law of God. We decide and you have to comply. Well, okay, no, I don't. I will not comply to you because you're not, your judgment is not, it's not just. It's not just. We have to go back to more profound and philosophical laws, natural law. 2 weeks ago, when I was talking about water is a collective asset, no, it's a essential need for human being. It is not. You can protect water on your territory, but it's a basic fundamental need. It's not a right, it's a need. You need water to survive, to live. So it's the same thing with the land. The land, it has to be practically sacred. It's not complicated. What the indigenous people, why they always refer to ancestral land? You have in this expression, you have the expression ancestral, ancestors, the past. They worship the past. They worship their heritage, their origin. Why we could not do the same thing here? Why it always touches one group of individual? This is quite shocking because it goes with the ideology of multiculturalism, what Charles Fichtner was describing a couple of weeks ago. Minorities, they have more rights and they can play with this. It doesn't work. We have to go back in time and invalidate this stupid concept of multiculturalism. That does not work. Most indigenous people, they live in ghettos. They have rights on the reserve. I would say they have rights. They don't pay tax, or they don't pay income tax, but they live in ghettos. You live in those, you go on those reserves, and you go there and you see the amount of poverty and the amount of drug dealing and the amount of violence is incredible. But now we're seeing this in big cities. The idea of the how you call it, the Indigenous Act, created ghettos, and they will do this with the 15-minute city. I can guarantee you, people will not comply. It will explode in their face. And I'm not advocating for violence. It's not me. It will arrive. I can call me Nostradamus if you want, but it will arrive. History proved that it always finished the same way. And I advise to people, just stand up to the authoritarian government.
Okay, so I got two things to say in response, but first of all, some housekeeping. We got 360 viewers right now. If you guys could share the room, we're trying to let's see if we can get that number up to 500. If anybody has any questions, I'm keeping an eye on the comments. Just please ask us a question, anything. It could be a tough question. Oh, what do you know? Speak of the devil. There's a question here, so I'll bring it up. Why do you think they're taking our guns away? Well, I guess that was more... he's implying that the reason that they're taking our guns away is so that we can't be violent. But yeah, if you have a question, put it in there. So I had two things I wanted to say. The first thing, you mentioned the Supreme Court. It's not justice. And I watching these people huddled together in these municipal town halls and they're very angry, they're upset, there's anxiety, but there's resolve. The one thing I'm not seeing is them saying we have to respect the authority of the courts. We have to respect their judgment. They're not looking at, why did they say this? Why, did the judge have a right? They're saying, they're recognizing, no, 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 we didn't vote for this court. I don't know who this judge is. That judge does not have the right to steal my land. So that is a positive development, even though I made some comments earlier about how they just care about their housing bubble. But this is a positive development. The other thing, Brenda, she mentioned this one. So I want to get your opinion. In my honest opinion, all provinces should seek to become independent republics to clean house and downsize government. I'll give my opinion, and then I'll hand it over to you, Andre. I I would rather live in a republic. I've traveled all through Alberta. Every aspect of Alberta I find is more free than British Columbia. And at this point, the things are so bad in every province that I would support Alberta's independence. And I think that's one path to success. The only thing that concerns me, the people in charge of that movement, I don't know if they have the qualifications to pull it off. That's my only concern. Andre, what do you think?
Well, I do agree with you. We do respect with Danielle Smith. She's not a state man. She's not a state woman. But there's no. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago. Is there a statement in the room? That's the first thing. The second thing is we always need a big brother. Canada is a small country, 41 million people, very vast territory, very a lot of natural resources, a very rich and beautiful country, very badly managed, very badly developed. We do not develop the second and third industry, like fabrication, and we export a lot of raw material. That's the first thing. When we talk about the 51st state, or we talk about the Quebec independence, for example, it's a joke. It is a joke because if you break the structure of Canada, you will have to negotiate with all the other province. And I will refer to what Tim Knight always say. And thank you, Tim, to be here, even if you're a little bit sick. Tim said all provinces are sovereign in a confederation. And I think if you can bring back the comment payment from Brenda, she's right. Independent republic provinces are already independent in a sense that the federal government is supposed to orchestrate the constitution, but it is supposed to be the province who are driving the economy, for example. I'm not talking about socialism. So when we look at the concept of 51st state, I would say, wait a second, if it would be a great alliance between United States, Canada, and Mexico, we would not have 51st state. We would have 10 provinces and 2 territories. That would be 13 more independent republic that would be in a great alliance that you could call Great America, for example, with the protection of the economy, with the protection of the culture, with the protection of the language, the protection of the right of worshiping religion. So you could integrate this in a what I could call a super constitution. With a republic, maybe, but the idea is to be able to respect the past of each provinces, and maybe we can refer to the 1914, 1918 First World War with the Remembrance Day. We are in this era now, November 1st till November 11th. We have to remember the past. We have to remember and build our future on the past. Our history is great. We have to remember it and build on it. And I think she's right. Clean the house, downsize the government. That's an understatement. It's not sustainable. It was funny to see the moron Bill Gates do a 180-degree shift toward climate change. First of all, he's a completely idiot and he should be in jail. But anyway, that's my opinion. There's no such thing as climate change. Climate is always changing. So we have to destroy all those ideologies, fake news. And yes, we have to clean the house, downsize the government. We have to restructure our way of thinking. What is the government? I'm reading now a book that is uh, social credit economic from Dr. Oliver Adorn. I will have, I hope, eventually an interview with him on the social credit of C.H. Douglas. The social credit nails it directly. The grab of the international financial system is strangling all nations, including Canada. And with what was happening now, maybe we will go in an election. We were discussing this with Tim. So it's not even a question of downsizing the government. We have to rethink our way. We have to rethink the way we define what is government. That means maybe writing a constitution and pushing those Supreme Court who thinks that they are the power after God. No, they're not. They're human and they are corrupted and they follow an agenda. I think I will stop there because I think we have to have those debates, but we cannot have them with a lot of people who don't even understand. If I talk about the liberal and the NDP, for example, or the Bloc in Quebec, they don't understand because they're part of the problem. They benefit from this system.
I want to comment on this, but just to lighten the mood, there's a really funny comment from Tea with Honey. I was born in Calgary, spent most of my life here, and last year I spent 1 year in British Columbia. The place is a proto-communist hellhole. Pardon my French, but wow. From insurance to bottle recycling, just madness there. Yeah, this is BC's out of control.
Okay, tea with honey. Come in Quebec. You will love. After that, you will love BC.
It's a national pastime in Canada. You try to see whose province is the worst. In my heart, I believe it's ours. BC is the worst.
Nova Scotia is not bad too, with Tim Houston.
A close second, yeah. When I responded to this, I just read the word independent, but there's three other concepts in here. One is a republic, clean house, downsized government. So Andre nailed it. Like, it's not sustainable, the size of government. You do have to downsize it because every 3 productive tax-paying private sector workers are paying for another public sector worker. That's like every household having a paraplegic disabled person that they have to take care of. That's a huge drain on society. That has to go. Cleaning house, if Mr. Kirk Reese is still here, the level of corruption here is out of control. I call it criminality. It's organized crime. Republic is the one that really interests me. Yes, the provinces are sovereign, and I think if Tim was here, he'd agree with me. They're sovereign, but they still have this elitist mentality where it's more top down, and it's gotten worse. 1867 was bad. Now it's just atrocious, where they're managing everything. The previous gentleman mentioned like recycling fees, bottling, taxation on levies. It's not sustainable. But how do you get a republic that endures? And I mentioned the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment. They never really lived up to that. But the whole purpose of the Second Amendment was, they said, to, if the government goes tyrannical, to overthrow it. You need guns and you need violence. So you need some measure in this Constitution for a republic to make it endure. And Bruce Party always says, it would be a disaster if Alberta separates and it just stays the same as it was in Ottawa. So I think, self-defense, gun rights is one thing that you need to have. And you need to have some mechanism to throw public elected officials in jail. Just because you're a public official doesn't give you the right to, violate the security of my person, which is a form of, it's like rape, essentially. You're violating the security of the person. You should be going to jail. You should not be able to hide behind your office. I'll just say one other thing. If you remember Charles Fichtner, he educated us. He said there's the word capital crime. It used to mean abusing your office, the power of your office. But today we just assume it means executing people.
And yes, I think you're right. The accountability, we cannot use this word anymore. It doesn't work. In politics, in municipal, provincial, or federal election, level, it doesn't work. They don't even answer. So one day, what will happen is people will become very angry, and they will act. They will act physically, and I can guarantee you, it's not funny to talk like this. When we arrive at this level of, it's not. I will not even talk about corruption. I would talk about lack of moral. We're all responsible at certain level, and when you talk about an independent republic, you talk about the elite in Alberta. Why did I say that Danielle Smith is not the woman of the situation? Because she's part of the system. She's part of the mold. They're all built in the same mold. We think that democracy exists. I wrote, and it's very simple. I said we have to forget the democratic man, and we have to put the suit of the imprisoned man, the man that is in jail. We are in a straight jacket, and we try to debate rationally when we are in a straight jacket. Remove the straight jacket first, and after that, you will be able to breathe better. We have to question the system, the financial system. We have to question the judicial system. We have to question the bureaucracy. What will happen now with the budget? Which it will, the government will fall. And what we will do, we will go into an election where again the media will align with the government against the conservative. You will have the bloc who will play its game. We will end up in a more deep crisis. It will not go. It will not end well. We never had violence in Canada except maybe during mobilization, and after that in the October crisis. I don't say that it was not staged, but and in 1990. But now look at the level of violence that is happening everywhere in big cities. We see it everywhere, and the protest for Gaza, or what they're in many medium city or big cities. We see it more and more. I will not even talk about fentanyl crisis. It's becoming practically a pandemic. And I think that the United States government knows what is happening. And the more we will go deep in this crisis, even with the nice smile of Mark Carney, they smile. They don't smile. They laugh at us. They laugh at us because they are part of this gigantic Ponzi scheme, and they laugh at us just like the Soviet Union power was laughing at the citizen. They are saying, we are the elite and you are the mass. George W. Bush, after the 9/11 event, was saying, I address myself to my elite. They don't care about citizens anymore. We have a municipal election tomorrow in Quebec, and all municipalities. They're laughing at people. Of course, they're laughing. You have what, 60% of people don't go to vote. Of course, they're laughing. They're winning all the time. One day it will end. One day it will end, and maybe it's the next generation who will get up and will say, wait. I'm 20 years old, or I'm 25 years old. I went to college, or I went to university. I have a diploma, a bachelor's degree. I cannot find job. What will I do? UBI? You think at 25 years old, people will accept that? They will rise. They will challenge the government, and maybe not just in the debate.
So, Andre, I want to get to the financial portion. You mentioned the monetary system, and let's see if we have time for that. First of all, we hit 500 viewers, so thank you very much. But if you can share, that'll help. There's a lot of good comments from the audience. I'm going to bring these up, and let's try to answer them. There's a lot to go through, so if we can answer them quickly.
Can I just say just one small thing? Thanks to Tim Knight for the new logo of Cerberus at the gate, the three Cerberus that arrives to the microphone. I love it.
I
We are the three dogs of protecting people from Hades, going to the kingdom of the dead. So thanks, Tim.
maybe I wish I come prepared. I could have put that picture up. I don't think anyone's seen it yet. So, but it's a cool picture. We'll put it up for the next episode. Let's go to the first one from Sue Calendire. The hardest thing to find in Canadian politics is honesty. I mean, I would agree with that. They're just lying at this point, and the people are asking them to lie.
Greetings, mortals. I am Cerberus, and tonight we discuss the ethics of eternal damnation.
Thanks. That's the job of Tim Knight. Great job. Sorry, Payman.
No, go ahead. What are your thoughts on Sue's comments that the hardest thing to find in Canada is honesty?
No, we can find it. I would say Sue Calendire is she has space with the Two Chicks and Politics, and I often go there. There's a lot of people who are honest. There's a lot of people who are seeing this. But what I find difficult sometimes is, you see, we hit 500 viewers. Can we connect with people? I would be surprised to see in BC people who went to the town hall to protest or to assist with what happened with the BC Supreme Court judgment. Were they liberal voters? Were they finally seeing that they will lose everything they have? Liberal people, they are also owners. If they lose this, so I think Sue is right. It's hard, but we will find people who are honest. They're not. Most of the people, they will comply because they benefit from the system. But if the system changes, they will change their opinion. When you make a revolution, you need 10 to 15% of the population. The rest will follow. Concentrate yourself on the 15% who wants to fight and who wants to fight for their right and freedom. The rest will follow. Look at the Freedom Convoy. They mobilized hundreds of thousands of people, not necessarily in Ottawa, but in the heart of Canadian. They were mobilized, a lot of them, and they paid the price, and their bank account were frozen. The GoFundMe financing was stopped. That was a wake-up call.
The next comment is from Brenda Raven. Absolutely, recall and accountability. This is when we were talking about the Constitution. I'll just add a couple of things. Not only is it important to be able to recall your elected officials, the barrier for recalling can't be higher. The threshold can't be higher than an election. If you look at British Columbia, David Eby, we tried to get him recalled. You only need a majority of the people that vote to get in, but you need a majority of all eligible voters to be recalled, which is impossible. It's impossible. So that's what I would say. And accountability, I agree. We should be able to throw these guys in jail. What do you say, Andre?
Yes, she's right. The problem is, as a citizen, we don't have leverage. Because there's nothing in the Constitution. There's no such thing as an impeachment in Canada, for example. You would refer to what they tried, what the Democrat tried with Trump for what? 8 years. They tried for 8 years to put him in jail. We can like Trump or not. It's not important. They tried for 8 years, but they had the procedure. We don't have this here in Canada. Somebody who's elected after that is a king of a small fiefdom. He can do whatever he wants. There's no such thing as referendum. I was referring to localism, subsidiarity. I don't like Switzerland. They always illustrate Switzerland as the great democracy. It's not a democracy. It's a bank. It's a bank. All the international institutions are there. So that's why it's called a great democracy. It's not a democracy. But you have to give Switzerland something. They have the right to vote in a referendum. And this is what I call leverage. We don't have this in Canada. There's no such thing as that. You saw what happened with the referendum in Quebec. And even it was funny this week because the ex-prime minister of Canada, Jean Chrétien, said, even if they would have won, I would not have accepted the verdict. And after that, they arrived with the Clarity Act, and the referendum was stolen. But even if it would not have been stolen, Chrétien admit that he would not have respect the result. What next? 2005, the French voted against the European Constitution, 55-45. And what happened? Sarkozy arrived, and in 2008, he signed the Lisbon Treaty, and he brought back the Constitution of Europe against the will of the French people in France. So if you don't have this, the referendum, yes, but with a gun. I'm sorry, you have to be able to implement this, and you need laws that are laws with teeth. It's an obligation to have laws with teeth. If somebody does commit a crime when he's in office, he has to be punished and put in jail. That's simple, based on ethics. And we don't have this now. So my question would be, maybe to our viewers, how can we change this? It is not easy. You don't have many options. Most of the structure that becomes tyrannic, they are overthrown by a revolution. I'm not advocating this at all. I'm trying to find a peaceful way, but we have to be more, I will say, persuasive. Let's stay diplomatic. We have to stay more persuasive with the people in front of us by defining maybe our values. Kirk Rees was asking, what is Canada? We have to define our value. It's a Christian nation, first of all, based on family, natural law, private property, and I will refer to C.H. Douglas' social credit. Yes, banks, they can do profit. Yes, companies, they can do profit. It has nothing to do with social credit in China. Yes, the purchasing power for people. Yes, we have so many ideas that we can develop, but nobody are talking about those ideas because we're stuck in a crisis. And people, what they do? They react. Inflation is skyrocketing, and they just tell themselves, okay, how will I survive next week, next month? How will I be able to keep my house? How will I be able to keep my job? You see what is happening. Carney, there was a small clip with Carney talking about the steel industry. And he was saying, oh, it's not that important in Canada. And there was a woman, I forgot her name. She said, Carney, he has a PhD in economy, but he's not an economist. He knows nothing about economy. He's a clerk. And we need great people who will debate on this.
So we got a couple more questions to go through. They're really good questions. They're shorter response. Great response, but a little shorter. The first one is from Sue Kellen Dyer. A confederation will fail when one city has 4 times the MPs than an entire province. Mathematically, yeah. I'll just quickly say I would support some extreme form of an electoral college, like something that geographically decentralizes power regardless of population size.
Well, and I do agree with you, because you can look at what is happening in the United States. You have the popular vote and you have the electoral college. I was always curious about how it works. And I've watched the last 3 elections, 2016, 2020, 2024, because I'm retired. I can go to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. I can guarantee you as well. I hate CNN. I hate Fox News. I hate ABC. I hate, I forgot which media I was watching, but I think it was Fox that was the most interesting because they have great screen, and it's a show. But I was watching everything, and I started to understand the difference between the counties, the state, the governor, and the electoral college. It's a fantastic show in United States. You don't see this nowhere else on the planet. And the electoral college has a very, very huge power And that would be a good model to imitate in Canada. Yes, it would give a more fair representation, because what we're seeing now, Quebec and Ontario, they rule everything. They rule everything, because you can see the amount of MPs in Quebec, 70. Now it's even more. It's even 82. And you have how many in Ontario? They rule everything. They rule everything. And it's even with the senator. The Senate is the same thing. So we have to imitate. Sorry, again, a long answer. I think I'm imitating Tim Knight
Yes, he's here in spirit.
in spirit.
Chad, who is speaking? The French dude. I want to follow him. I know that Wolf told you, but this is Andre Meloche, and underneath his name, it's his handle, Le Poète Russe. So go ahead and follow Andre. He's also got a podcast. Andre, what's your podcast?
In French, La philosophie de l'information. In English, The philosophy of information. On YouTube.
And how does he find it? Is there a handle for it, or was he search?
But if he goes on X and he goes in my profile, the link is there.
All right. He had a really. Here we go. So the next question I wanted to bring up is from two different people, and they're saying the same thing. So the first one is Brenda Raven. We need an entirely new system of government built on constitutions similar to the USA. And the second one is from Chad again. We don't have leverage because we do not have a militia. So let me just quickly answer, and I'll hand it over to you.
Go ahead.
I've been hammering away at this episode. These constitutions they used to call them parchment rights. Whatever they're written on, they're not worth the paper that they're written on, because they'll get abused. The only way is to have structures that gives you guns, weapons, means to defend yourself, the right to attack the government if they come in and try to steal your property, and the right to throw them in jail if they violate the law. A militia, it's going to be difficult in Canada because of the history of subjugation. The people think, we're basically peasants here. But I agree, a militia in practice would work.
Well, I keep the comment of Chad McWonderful. First of all, I love his name, and I will follow you too. We don't have leverage. A small anecdote: I live in a village in a small city, and a couple of years ago, I had to manage a collective will, and I asked my fellow neighbors, maybe we can start to watch the neighborhood. Nobody stood up. Nobody was interested in just go around at night, 1-2 men, and just to make sure that the property of people are okay. And nobody was interested. The militia, the concept of a milice, it comes from citizen. So I will refer to something what is important, and I think he's right. In Switzerland, again, when they do their military services and they are discharged, they keep their weapons. They keep their weapons, and they are entitled to defend themselves. So he's right. Having leverage means we have to reform. And if we go back to the previous comment of Brenda, reform the system will also mean reform the army. Look at the army. It's a fucking joke in Canada. It's a joke. Andre,
they have tampons. They can use tampons.
I'm sorry. It's November 1st. It's Remembrance Day. I'm angry because we do not support the soldier that fought, and we do not support the structure of the army, because we would have to reinforce the Canadian Armed Forces. The army is always the balance between the people and the government. Usually the army will defend the sovereignty of the country, will defend the citizen, and the citizen will be proud of the army and proud to be part of the army. I will just end on one thing. In Quebec, it's quite fascinating because we are passive aggressive in Quebec. I will talk about myself. I'm not a representative of Quebecers, but most Quebecers are against the army. They're against war. They said that they're against war. We're all for peace. Yes, but are you ready to defend your territory? Most Quebecers, they are not. Compared to Canadians who are more they're more entitled to defend their territory. I think he's right. If we don't want to talk about militia, we can at least reform the army and make sure that we are proud to support people who engage. Maybe mobilization. I was 18. I remember in college, the Canadian Armed Forces arrived in college and they were recruiting young people. And I thought that maybe I should go. It is not mandatory. It's not an obligation. But I was thinking maybe that they were offering to pay your study and everything. How come we do not value our military system? We do not. Why? The more we weaken the military system, the more we can control people. It becomes practically a police state.
We don't really have to talk about it, but Brenda, you're right. The U.S. Constitution allows for a militia. That's where we're going with that as well. Here's another really good comment from Riff Raft Podcast. The industrial and agricultural revolutions were the beginning of the end for freedom. Men need land. I 100% agree. And the three of us, me, you, and Tim, have talked about this. If you don't own land, somebody said something. He goes, if you can't own property, you are property. These people in 15-minute cities, they're slaves.
Well, I was referring to David Orbach, this architect, and the house container, but I can go back to 1920, the dekulakization. Kulak in Russian means small owner of land, farmers. And the dekulakization at the time was the land grabbed by the Soviet Bolshevik. And it brought great famine in Ukraine and in Russia at the time. So when you deprive people based on noble intention of we do a revolution for the people, that's not true. They robbed the land, they stole the land from small businesses, from small farmer. And after that, they were destroying the structure of agriculture. He's right. When you lose land is food. When you lose this, you lose your sovereignty. It starts there.
Agreed. What else do we got? First of all, we've gotten to 670 viewers. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's make it to 1,000.
Yeah, I was going to say 750, but 1,000's good too.
Come on, you have to aim high. Huh?
All right, fine. 50,000, that's what we're going for. We got a good comment from Sue Calendar, sort of a different track. The narrative of mainstream media and pollsters currently is that the Conservative Party slight lead, but Pierre is well behind Mark. We had this conversation a couple months ago. Their script is going to plan. I don't know if I read that wrong or I don't really fully follow it. I think Pierre Poilievre is behind, and I think they're going to lose if we go to another election. What do you think, Andre?
They will. I'm very sorry. I could vote Conservative, but not after what he said about Ukraine, what he said about Israel. His silence about Bill C4. Nothing is clear except his three-word slogan all the time. Nothing is clear. So first of all, I think he's burned. And the Conservative Party has to do a lot of thinking, because they will go through another loss, and it will not help Canada at all. Even if Carney comes back, the crisis will just amplify.
No, agreed. We got one tea with honey. He's got two-part question. They can freeze people's bank accounts, but zero repercussions for any of it. Our charter isn't worth the paper it's printed on. My thoughts, I agree. Some people disagree. They say it's good, but it's the interpretation, or we don't defend it. I don't know. I don't know. How much time do you have? I think the whole thing is a mess.
Well, like I said, if your paper doesn't have teeth, it's worth nothing. It's worth nothing since 1982. It's worth nothing. It's based on minority, and the government always play a minority against another one. And you're stuck defending you're stuck defending your right, trying to compensate for the right of somebody else. I will refer again to Ukraine. What's the identity of Ukraine? They hate Russian. This is not a way to have your identity to hate your opponent. You have to define who you are, what you want, and because we are in this system, the government always play us against each other. Tea with honey is right.
Sorry, it's a bit of a madhouse over here with these dogs. There's some more good questions. I'm gonna guys settle down. MJ, Ontario and Quebec won't give up seats. You know that, Sue Calendar. Canadians don't have property rights. We have tenurial rights. Actually, sorry, I'll come back to that in a second. I wish Quebec and Ontario would separate, but they won't because they raid the economies of all other provinces to grow. So the issue is between these two, Ontario and Quebec, they have too much power. I guess the only thing I can add is the Electoral College is the only thing I can think of. Maybe a Triple E Senate. What are your thoughts, Andre?
Well, first of all, I would say to the rest of Canadians, use ivermectin against parasite. Because I'm sorry, $14 billion of equalization in Quebec, and Sue will agree with me. I can talk about hydroelectricity. I can talk about everything. We have to look at ourselves. I'm a Quebecers. I'm Canadian, French Canadian. I cannot speak for Quebecers because Quebecers, they are under a dome of mass propaganda. They are under a spell. We have to break this spell. I think it will break. It is coming. It's just a question of time. But I know English Canadian in the rest of Canada, they will not win. Maybe they will take the lead. Maybe Alberta will take the lead. I hope.
We'll see. All right, we're down to the last question. There's two of them here, and let's get your thoughts. This one I already read by accident. Canadians don't have property rights. We have tenurial rights, so your land tenure. The other one is the notwithstanding clause can take away your section 7 to 15 rights. Those are all your legal rights. It seems like they're separate, but I guess for me the charter is not that important because I just don't have faith in it after what's happened in the last 5 years. But property rights are important, which they've just been violated by the BC Superior Court ruling. And MJ, I agree. Well, not in this case. We have fee simple out here in the West. Well, we had, evidently. But a lot of the relationship of Canadians with the crown, with the king, with the monarchy, whatever you want to say, is like tenants. And that's a big chunk of the problem we have in Canada.
I cannot agree more. Think about private property, residential property with municipal tax now, with the inflation and what is happening. The level of bureaucracy is rising at every level. What's the solution? They increase the taxes. Elderly people, they arrive at a certain age, 65 years old, they retire, and they pay municipal tax like everybody else. But now the taxes are increasing more rapidly than the inflation. One day they say, what will I leave to my children? They deprive people of their inheritance slowly but surely. And I think MG is right. The property right are like an illusion.
Yes. I know I said it was the last one. Brenda sort of nails it here as well. It all boils down to property rights, from gun grab to culling, livestock, and land grabs. I think that nails it.
Exactly. Gun grab, the ostriches. It's incredible. You see this in France. They arrived. They slaughtered cattle, 60,000 cattle for nothing. There was no virus. It's for prevention. Which is this? What is this? We arrive at a point where they can arrive on your small farm. They will slaughter all your chicken, and there's no way. I was surprised in BC with the ostriches. I was surprised that people will not go and defend. There were a lot of people who wanted to defend, and what the Supreme Court will give his judgment, rule the judgment, I think November 5th. What will happen? She's right. She's right. What will be next?
You
Our
know,
food?
let's try to end it circling back to what we said at the beginning. We were looking at the land case with the Cowichan tribe and how people are somehow activated now. But with the ostrich farm, not as much. Like, this wasn't 50% of the people. This was like a handful of people. And I think what happens is the government messed up. When you're going after an individual farm, you could paint them as big business. You could paint them as greedy. You know, they're rich business operators. But when you go after everyone's private property, their land, that's a different story. So as tragic as it was with the ostrich farm, I couldn't convince people to get behind it. They said, "Oh, you know," they'd come up with whatever excuse. But yeah,
Well, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of ignorance behind all those events. For example, me, I'm from Quebec. Since we know each other, I interest myself more into Canadian politics. BC, Alberta, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. I'm starting to understand. I was totally ignorant of what was happening outside of Quebec. But when the BC, the ostrich crisis arrived, I was more than interested because it touches what is happening since 5 years, the COVID mandate, what happened with the ejection, and how they deprived us of our basic rights. And I think it will just it will become worse. I'm not hoping for that, but it will become worse, and it will force us to open our eyes and to react, stand up, like I say, stand up and tell them. Then there's one thing that we will see, maybe the outcome if there's an election. What will be the turnout? Again, 40% of the population don't vote.
yeah, that is a problem. Okay. I want to end it, but Brenda Raven says this has been such a refreshing conversation. We need more like this. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Brenda. We're here every Saturday, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. And next week it'll be with our third co-host, Timothy Knight. And Chad McWonderful says, yes, but we need to talk solutions. The problems merely link. You're right. If you talk too much about problems, people get shut down. But I think we did a good job today. We talked about some potential solutions. Andre, do you want to comment on that?
He's right. He's right. We always talk about strategy. To implement strategies, what would be? I work at Harrow, Quebec for 33 years. We were doing scenario, short term, middle term, and long term. What would be Canada in 2030? It says 4 years ago. What would be Canada in 2050? Look at what they're doing with the United Nations agenda or the World Economic Forum. They have an agenda. They have goals. Let's us define what we want. Like we said, private property, freedom of right, freedom of speech, freedom of worship. We have all the solution, and he's right. But we have to create something, a good strategy, a good strategic plan, and after that, we have to implement it. How do we do this? We need volunteers. We need people who will relay the message. We are having a show here. Share it. Share the show. Even if they disagree with us, we can debate. We have to reopen. Sue Dyer, she's doing a space every 2 times per week, 2 Chicks and Politics. A lot of people now are starting to follow alternative media. Disconnect yourself from the bullshit of mainstream media. Completely. Pull the plug. I've pulled the plug 32 years ago, and I'm still alive.
You can get through it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, we didn't reach our goal of 50,000 viewers,
50,
but we got 750. So a big thank you to the audience.
Thanks.
And I don't know, it was a great episode. Andre, thank you for being here with me, and a big thank you to the audience.
Yes, and we're waiting for our third Cerberus next week, our dear Tim Knight.
Join us next week. Tim will be here as well. Bye.
Good. Bye.